to my other half and I said, it's like we're in the land of mindfulness.
Have a conversation without distraction, like the mindfulness thing.
You can tell the British people abroad because they're the ones who get in, eat and get out again.
But it's much easier in the environment you describe to do it. Now you're being mindful.
There's always got to be that time for appreciating the moment, and I just saw it happening a lot more naturally.
You're only ready for, you can only hear the message when you're ready for it. Did you do belly breathing? Was it just like, yeah?
It's just, listening to music.
Listen to, and being mindful. So that's
InspirationNation. Hello, Lee Kemp here for another week on a podcast with Jose Noya, and we are without Ryan this week. How are you doing, Joe?
Yeah, I'm all good. After having a little battle, I was a bit late. I do apologise. A bit late. I'm so sorry, Lee. I had to apologise, didn't I, for being late for the podcast this week. I got involved in
impertinent activity of Nerf wars. Always has to happen. So you had one without me last week, one without Ryan this week. Joe, you are the consistent throughout.
I know. Yeah, I just I've been a bit more consistent, haven't I, over the last few weeks? So yeah, it makes a change. But that's what I love about us three. You know, bless him, Ryan can't make it this week, but this is why we always have it. We go, don't we? We always be able to get one out a week, and I think this is why it works so well as a three. Because if one of us can't make it, we can always do something, can't we? So yeah, I think it's good.
We can, and we always do. Thank you everyone out there for supporting us, downloading us across all podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube. Just look for Jose Noya Inspiration Nation and follow us on social media at listen to TOIN. So I hear I've got a lot to live up to following last week's subject, Joe, is that right?
You do, yeah, you do. Yeah, Ryan did a great job. But we are glad to have you back, of course.
Of course, I'm glad to hear that. And very strong download numbers last week, so I believe that is the case. Those out there listening, we'd love to hear what you think. As well, those still doing it every week, there are people crawling through those archives, listening to 160 odd shows, plus interviews that we've got in there. We appreciate that. Again, just follow us on Twitter. Let us know what shows you're liking, and we can do more of that. And hopefully, there'll be one people like now, because I have been, well, I wasn't here last week, Joe, so I was off on holiday. Tied in with the bank holiday, gave me an extended break. My brain completely switched off, so hopefully I've got some good subjects for us. In fact, it was when we were doing a little message earlier to check we were all right for tonight that I suddenly realised it might be me talking tonight. But I actually thought of this one while I was away, which is why I referenced it. So I was abroad. I was in Italy, or an offshoot of Italy, on Sardinia to be specific, and it gave me a lot of opportunity to think about thing I like talking about a lot, which is mindfulness, and thinking of it from a kind of a cultural perspective, if you like. So we did the thing you do when you're in Europe, and we went into town square and we sat outside a little restaurant and we had a coffee, because that's what you do when you're out in Europe. Have a conversation, watch the world go by. And the first day we did this, it's a really nice day. It was really busy, and there was a lot of this going on. So lots of people out having a coffee, sitting on park benches, having conversations. It's talked about a lot, for people listening abroad. I'm talking with my UK perspective here, that there is a different pace of life when you go onto the continent. I don't know if slower is the right word, but I think more relaxed is definitely the right word. Obviously, certain countries where it's really hot, you get your siestas midday. Joe, from your native land, you know about this. And I kind of wanted a bit of input from you as well, because I'm talking where I was in Italy, but obviously France, Spain, Portugal, they all have these similar, more, again, relaxed isn't necessarily the right word, or slow, or whatever I'm saying, but that time for yourself, that time to sit and enjoy the moment, really enjoy the conversation you're having with the person, take joy in those small things. And I noticed a lot of it when I was out there, and obviously it's great because I'm away on holiday and I can get involved in that and I can take that in, and we just go out, do some sightseeing for the day, again, sit down, have a drink. But everyone around me, or a lot of the people around me, because there would have been tourists as well like me, were people who were local, but they were doing the same thing. They were having that drink, they're enjoying their conversation, and I was looking, really involved in these conversations with people as well. And I think what I referenced to my other half, and I said, it's like we're in the land of mindfulness. This thing that we seem to be striving for, and people are writing books on and going to seminars for, and you get apps for around appreciating the small things, taking in the moment, etc., etc. These people are living it daily. And what is it about, I say ours, particularly kind of from UK, United States, that kind of pace of life, what is it that's driven that as opposed to the more continental pace of life? And I suppose, what's the pros and the cons? And I didn't know, Joe, you being a multinational man, what your perspective was on the situation as well.
Yeah, it's a really good one because, obviously when I've been to Spain and, it's the culture, you go to the shops, you go out and everything like that. It's just almost like, we grow up and it's part of their nature, just that they do it. And maybe that's why they have a good lifespan, right?
Well, there is that, the kind of the Mediterranean life expectancy.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the UK go out there, don't they? And go out there because of that lifestyle. And again, I just want to say thanks to people on TikTok. So Sandy Cochran, 59, thanks for joining. Appreciate you. It's just a way of life. They work different hours. So when it gets hot, they'll work up to the midday, and then they'll take a siesta and they'll go out, and then they'll stay out late. But they will make a point of actually socialising out, going out and socialising, and really engaging in conversation. Like I know when I was younger, and you just sit around a table with food, and there'd be no distractions. You wouldn't have any of these phones going on or anything like that. And I don't know whether you noticed that now, because it's been a bit of a while. I don't know whether you noticed any phone use or anything like that, because mindful does need that. Did you notice any people on their phones?
Still, I would say that's fairly similar in that's probably creeping in, like it's creeping in everywhere. But again, the thing, and you'll know this, and the thing that's different, and my partner's done a lot more traveling to the continent than I have, kind of references this, and it's how it is that, like if you go out in the evening here and you go for a meal, you're almost rushed in and rushed out, aren't you? What can we get you next? Can we do that? Do you want the bill? You're out of the restaurant. Whereas when you go abroad, you book your table and that's it, you're there for the night. And the big difference for me is kind of chasing down the people where you are for the bill so you can go, rather than it kind of being forced upon you and it felt like you're being rushed out. And it's my half saying you can tell the British people abroad, because they're the ones who get in, eat and get out again. Whereas if you're more akin to that lifestyle, once you're in, that's it for the evening. You relax, you're talking to people, and it's, again, like you said, on that socializing aspect, it's a very, very different approach.
Yeah, and it's really funny saying
laid back again and kind of relaxed.
Yeah, because even when me and my wife go out for a meal, even when I say to, because I think I still have a little bit of that where I say, let's just sit and let's just, let's eat and then we're going to go. And I just, let's enjoy the atmosphere. Even my daughter Meg, she likes that, so she has that, a bit of that in her as well. And my beloved, she has that where she eat and then we go. But I said, well, can't we just sit and just have a drink and have a chat? And it's like we tend to sort of sit about, and I try and encourage that, because I think it's important to have a conversation without distraction, like the mindfulness thing. And again, not strictly mindfulness, but you're literally
it's in that area though of thinking.
Yeah, so like these phones, when I have my phone, I literally don't have it on the table. I always have it in my pocket if I have got it. In fact, Lee, I think you are the king of mindfulness at the minute, because this is the third episode, I think,
it's very heavy on my brain right now. I'm really trying to push myself on it, which is why it's been.
Yeah.
I did the one you missed when you were away, and it's me and Ryan, where I talked specifically about the mindfulness eating thing, about just concentrating on what you've got, taking in the taste, just being in that very moment. And then this is an expanded concept. So the radical end of my thinking on this was, there's a lot of this going on, but I don't know if it is such a prevalent conversation somewhere like, France or Italy or Spain or something, where do you need to push yourself to be mindful so much, or actually is that part of the culture? Is there a difference there, a gap that we're almost trying to fill or train ourselves on?
I think it's just a cultural thing, and I don't think actually they're not thinking, it's mindfulness. It's just something they do.
That's it.
And they recognise it's mindfulness. It's just something they do. But is it mindfulness? I suppose it is to an extent. But I don't think they're aware that it's mindfulness. I think sometimes you've got to be aware of everything that's going on, because you can have a conversation and you can sit there, but when you have a stop, what are you doing when you stop in that, when you're there? Are you observing? Are you taking the sounds? Are you, can you look at something in depth? Notice something you haven't noticed before? Those are all the steps of mindfulness, and it is tricky. And going back to whether people do it, as a natural thing, is definitely cultures in they go out, but do they actually specifically practice mindfulness? I'd say no. I'd say it's more of a cultural thing, and they still have to. I suppose they still would have to be aware of what mindfulness is, because you can still fall into the trap of just saying things for the sake of saying things and not really observing, and not listening in a conversation. That can still happen. I know when I was in Spain and we had this conversation in Spanish, and I could understand a lot of Spanish, and people doing the same sort of thing. They're just speaking and reacting rather than just waiting for those moments. I noticed when we do our podcast, when I edit the podcast, actually there's a lot of gaps where we just sort of sit for like 1 or 2 seconds and we would just wait for it all to sink in before we speak. And that, when you see that, you don't really see that in Spain. It'll just be da 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 da, and it's really fast paced. And not to say people don't sit there and drink and like sit there and observe the scenery. You do. But mindfulness is that's the level of mindfulness. The more mindfulness is about actually what's the sea doing, what's the sound, what's the smells, can you notice them? And that's where the hard work is, because it's not hard work. It is hard work because you don't realise it. It's difficult to do because you're always thinking about, oh, what am I going to do next? Or so it pops into your head, I've got to think about what we do in a minute, and how do you actually sit in that moment? So to answer your question, is it something I practice? I'd say it's probably a mix between the two. You probably get people like yourself who are practicing it, like myself, when I remember. I do try and sit and go, okay, let's observe. But it's much easier in the environment you describe to do it. Now you're being mindful. I think it's easier to do in that kind of culture, because everything is much more slowed down, and that's what you need to do, is slow down. You can slow down that culture. It's a whole lot harder because what's next? What's next? What's next? What's next? Whereas opposed to go, hang on, we've got this evening. We're going to sit down. We're going to have a chat, and we're going to really talk about things in depth. So does that answer your question? I'm not sure it does.
Yeah, no, it does. And it's just like a few of these I've done, they're just kind of thoughts that I'm building in my head and observations without necessarily having a conclusion, just kind of taking things in and seeing what it is. And part of my thought, I suppose, is whether it needs to be such a concept in a culture where you're naturally more in the moment just because of the way people are. Whereas we're, it's this kind of, I think things are moving on now, but it's that whole time is money type of thing, which can get taken to the absolute extreme, which I think it has done in the past, rather than just kind of that balance of everything. And I'm, not advocating you just slow down and do nothing and become a bum and sit on a bench every day. But there's an element of, and it's different for everyone. Everyone's lifestyle, what their aspirations are, what they want, but there's always got to be that time for appreciating the moment. And I just saw it happening a lot more naturally. It just kind of got my brain going a little bit. And again, it's reinforcing in my head, where do I want to be in that balance? How do I want things to kind of to play out?
Well, they do say, don't they, talk about meditating diets make you better and all this sort of stuff. But I think also that cultural piece plays a part. And I think it all comes down to also planning your day as well. Like for us, if we plan in, we've had 15 minutes of mindfulness, we'll try and do that a day. Where do we put it? How do we fit it in? Will it be, are our people around us on board with it? If you talk to someone, I'm not sure how culturally, hey, we'll go out to eat. Let's go and eat. But you can do it yourself. Let people know. But how people would receive that and go, when we're out there, let's try and be a bit more mindful. I think there'll be a great conversation to actually do some of that practice. Actually, sort of talking about it in that way, so people can be more culture. I think there's definitely more awareness of doing it, and now you're bringing even more to this podcast. Right? We're going to really recognise that. And again, as I said, for you, even myself, I'm trying to take moments of if I've got a spare moment, I'll pick up a book, I'll start reading the book, but I'll try and make moments for myself. That's not necessarily mindfulness, but it's actually making time for yourself. And in those moments, can you just take a breath and just? It doesn't have to be a long time. It can be a minute, but it makes a difference. You slow everything down for a minute. And I think you're right. I think, this whole culture of time is money and got to get things done. I think you actually get more, we talked about it before, where we can get more done if we do, have moments for ourselves. We recharge in those moments like you're finding, Lee.
Yes.
I can ask you a question. When you was out there, what can you tell what the most mindfulness thing you did? What can you remember?
For me, couple of bits I stick out. One is that I spoke about, that kind of coffee shop moment, and we were talking, having conversations and just enjoying the atmosphere of what was around us. And I guess there's sometimes we went, because it was quite quiet out at the time, went to the beaches and literally just sat and took in the sounds and everything else that was there. And there's one bit we found a little, like a lagoon beach, and then right at the end there was almost like a lagoon within the lagoon where there was absolutely no one else there, and it was completely shut off from the wind, and there was a really gentle tide, and you could hear the sound of the water, and it was just enjoying the calm of that moment.
And that's it. That's actually detaching from that. So you did it, and that's that blueness, the depth of the blueness, all that sort of stuff, and the sounds, and how that get into your ears. That's it. And I suppose I was going to ask you, how did you feel in that moment? Describe how you felt when you did it.
Just chilled, completely chilled. It was a number of days in, and you know how these things work when you're off of work and you're out of the country and everything else, and you haven't got your normal day-to-day responsibilities. The longer you do it, the further removed you kind of get from things. And it was on the last day? I think it was, before we were going back. So I'm like 5-6 days in at this point. So I was quite chilled anyway. And then that was kind of like a peak of that, if you like.
Love that. And I think that's something, to try and keep going, even when you're back. How can you get that more into your schedule? I suppose it's there moments you can do that. I just want to give a little shout out to Boston Mad, Preach Brother Preach. I'm not sure which one of us that was. It one of us, apparently. Thank you very much, Boston Mad. I appreciate that. And thank you, Mr. Fodder. Thank you for joining. Appreciate you as well. I think you described some really good things there. And again, I'm going to ask you a question. How can you, because you said before you went away to where you are now, how would you describe your stress levels pre and now having come back, or even after that mindfulness? What's the difference? To say the scale of 1 to 10, say 1 being no stress at all to 10 before, and no stress at all 1 to 10 now, or at the time you did your mindfulness, what's the difference?
I guess, I don't know how to put it on a scale, because the various things you've been talking about, especially like my New Year's resolution and the way of timing the day and stuff like that, was it's been a lot lower recently than it has been in a long time. And I think I've more solidified that necessarily than taking myself down on the scale. And it's, so you said, it's making that time going forward. Like on a drive here at home, that during the day, what we want to do is make sure there's time for going out for a walk. And that, at the very least half an hour, if not an hour. And that's a break in the day, chance to just talk about things, take things off, work off a bit of stress, and just trying to make sure. And I said to you before we start recording, Joe, did a lot of walking on the holiday, and now that we kind of broke the back of starting to do that type of activity, want to just keep that going now and trying to make sure there's time for that during the day, every day. So it's like you said, with even just a minute or anything, it's just being conscious of the positive benefit and just making time for that time, making it important.
Yeah, and you just reminded me, actually, because every morning before work, and I hadn't been doing a holiday when I was on it, I didn't go for a while, I did a staycation. And I've got to be honest, did I do any mindfulness? I probably had moments where I was downstairs, I'd turn the telly off, my wife had gone up to bed, and I'd like sit there, and I'd just sit with the cat on my lap, and I'd just be sitting there thinking, this is nice, it's quiet, and I'll just take 5 minutes before I go up to bed just to do a little bit of, sometimes I don't realise, do I really something doing? Just like I am taking moments out where everything's off and I'm just there, 5 minutes. But every morning there's a routine I do before work where I go for a 20-minute walk. And in that minute walk, I will not get the phone out. It will just be me, and I've said this before, and the trees and the sounds, just so I can start the day. And it's just that whole moment. It all starts from that. We talked about it before, making the bed. So my routine at the minute is, because obviously people know about the difficulty I've had recently. If you've gone back through the podcast, I've had a really difficult time. So I was trying to get some sort of structure. So the real basic structure I've gone back to is like, just make the bed, get up, unload the dishwasher, do any washing up, just tidy it so it looks tidy. So there's 2 tasks, really 2 major tasks. If the washing's on, do that, but try and do it mindfully. Nothing playing, all silent. Then half an hour before my work starts, I'll just go out for a walk for 20 minutes or something like that. and just be a mindful walk, and it'll just be nothing. I won't pick up the phone. I'll just be me in that, and then that's my real sort of routine. But when I went on holiday, I didn't really have one. I didn't have that walk. We had to make an effort to go and walk, or hey, let's go for a walk, and we started to walk and stuff like that. But I'd be in the garden or whatever, and I'd just sit there and just try and take things in. But I'm mindfully doing it. I think there's some now moments in my routine that I'm actually just sitting there, and I can just sit and just, it almost comes a bit more naturally. Like, I can take a minute and let's just take this all in for a moment. And I, like you, definitely does lower the stress levels. It definitely has an effect. But I do also think that we've had job changes, haven't we? And I know I have. And I've been really fortunate about my role. And it's like, I'm really lucky with some good leaders and that. And I think that promotes that whole, because I really love, my work has got to be meaningful. And if my work's not in a good place, it really impacts all that stuff. But because I feel great, I'm doing it. And really the challenge is, when you don't feel great, do you do it then? And I have gone through a real tough time. And I have recently sat at my mum's house, etc. And I've sat in that house and I've done things. So I am doing it as well, but it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge, but it's those slow little steps that you take. But taking time for yourself and having those alone times, or even with someone you're both practicing it, I think is really valuable, and does definitely lower the stress levels. I've definitely noticed when I was stressed, I used to feel like someone would have like my throat, like someone be poking my throat, and it feel like I've got a knot in my throat. And I would recognise that would be stress, but that is definitely stress. And so noticing all these things in your body and go, oh, hang on, that's almost a mindfulness, that body mindfulness, to think, where am I actually feeling inside? And because I'm quite extrovert, as you well know, right? I find that challenging. Whereas you, as an introvert, and you still have extrovert tendencies, but you find that I don't know. You can tell me if I'm wrong, but you tend to find that do that quite naturally yourself.
Yeah,
check
you're right, correct.
Yeah. And I always found that a real challenge. And I think I've learned that from speaking to you guys. But that's where I sit with it.
That's good. Some good views on that. I said, and you kind of referenced it. I've done a few topics on this. I think there'll be a few more of these coming, Joe, because it's very prevalent on my mind right now. And I remember when I was introduced to this years ago, and I was skeptical, I would say, and I almost want to shake my skeptical self and say, get on board with this quicker.
Do you know what that's
for people listening? There'll be lots of people who aren't necessarily, who'll be more at that place that I was than where I am now. And what I hope is there's just bits of advice and learning to help people as they go through their own journeys with that. But there's definitely something I think you appreciate, and you appreciate more as you get older in the kind of practices it teaches you, and stress maintenance, and enjoying where you are, and realizing that as much as you strive for where you want to be, that there's so many things about your life that change no matter how far along you go on that path, and they stay the same and they're constant, and it's good to enjoy them then as much as you do later on. But again, that's something I don't think I could teach myself 5-10 years ago, but I wish I could have.
Well, the thing is, I really believe in this thing that you can only hear the message when you're ready for it.
Yes.
You're ready for it right now because of your stage of life. Now, I don't know if I said this in the podcast before, when I was going through my depression about 20 odd years ago, like I was really depressed. You remember this, I think. You remember it, don't you? I think, because we were working together at the time.
Yeah.
One of the things were to be mindful. It was really quite new then. And I was like, what is this mindfulness stuff? What is it? What's this? What is it? Didn't even, this is a load of this is baloney, rubbish, whatever. Thank you, Swag, for your likes. I really appreciate that.
Much appreciated.
Yes. I just think, what is this baloney? What is this rubbish? I don't need this. This is just a waste of my time. But as you go in, mindfulness is important. And I'll just advocate meditation is important. Massively. If you love mindfulness, Lee, I know meditation, you did it once, but I think more of that. You've got to think about that yourself. Tom Bilyeu, if anyone knows Tom Bilyeu, TikTok, here on YouTube, here on the podcast, he did Quest, and he multi-billion-pound bars, like the health bars, and he was super driven, like A-type, massive driven, and he still is, but he believes in meditation as a superpower. So there you go. It comes from someone who is a driver type A, would say, in the past would have said, meditation, mindfulness, what a load of baloney. And he's got older, and it is, but it'd be great, wouldn't it, to be able to sort of accept this at a younger age. I think if we could get it into something a younger, even, I think my wife was saying that they were getting, at reception age, trying to sort of teach, not but some type of practicing mindfulness. Actually, Jen, mindfulness in nursery, wasn't it?
Breathing, belly breathing.
Belly breathing. Anything else? Did you do belly breathing? Was it just like
belly breathing?
Yeah.
It's just listening to music.
Listen to and being mindful. So
I love that.
That's
parts of the brain work.
And how parts of the brain work. So that's that. Is that still going on?
Yeah.
So they're getting it now. Having that right now, that early stage, you would think that might translate to when people start to. So we combat depression and all that sort of stuff, because people can be aware of where they're feeling and actually do this stuff. And it won't be alien because they would have done it at that age. So more of that, please. Thanks, Jen. Appreciate that. So there you go. So
good
perception,
stuff.
right? Did you hear that? I don't know if you heard that.
Yes, no, heard all of that. It came through. It's really good. Nice little guest run in there on the show. I like it.
Thanks, Jen. She went, no. Anyway,
I think we've got a good conversation out of my random holiday musings there. So I thank you for that, Joe. But
great conversation. I think it was definitely needed. And I didn't ask how you are, but you sound like you're doing all right.
Good. Just as it is, when you're doing something that's new to you and you keep reinforcing it in your head. So, every 3 weeks, I'll probably be a bit more on this kind of path of things that I'm looking at and reinforcing, and it's definitely working, I would say, which is good stuff. So more mindfulness to come. Again, everyone out there, we thank you. Everyone on TikTok, I'll say thanks for you on your behalf, Joe. Obviously, just look for J Noya-Inspiration on TikTok. You can see us every Tuesday, somewhere around about 6, half 6, something like that, half 5, somewhere in that region. You can catch us live every Tuesday. Of course, podcast comes out Thursday, Friday. Catch us on YouTube, just at Noya-Inspiration, and across every podcast platform. Just hit subscribe, get us every week. Again, we thank everyone who is in there and going through the archives, looking at historic shows. We massively appreciate the support. The numbers are going up at great volumes right now, which is fantastic to see. Again, just give us a follow, give us a like, tell us what you like. We appreciate it all. And head over to inspirationnation.org.uk for everything to do with the podcast. Links to everywhere you can get the podcast. Sign up for Joe's newsletter, details of the coaching service, and of course the merchandise store where you can get mugs, face masks, t-shirts, hoodies, etc., etc., etc. There is Joe modeling the wonderful face mask there. We massively appreciate all the support. Right, I think just Joe, count us down, and we'll be back again to I was going to say to 3.
What we've missed?
Weird.
Before we count down, we've missed something. Come on, Lee.
Something about being mindful.
Mindful. Okay. What's my takeaway? I would say my takeaway from this conversation is to have a more of a schedule to have it, to actually build
a good bit of advice.
Like whether it's, and have a trigger. So whether it's, so my triggers always work, like the work, but I really need a trigger for my holiday. I haven't got a trigger. Don't forget about it. When I get the holiday, it's like, it's just all the routines go, and they're like, oh, right, I'm just going to roll through the day. So for me, it's going to be, okay, well, at work, I've got a routine. And when I'm off on holiday or or I've got a break from work, how do I build a routine? I'm going to set that for you guys as well about around that. Especially having a tough time as well, because, I've had a really tough time, and I'd say to you, just, build a routine. And the second thing I'll just say to you is that I've always said on other podcasts, I want to sort of maybe include this in the podcast now, that all our amazing listeners, viewers, people on all our social media platforms, please, if you want us to talk about any particular subject, you can be the fourth person and just throw in a subject and we will talk about it. So please message us directly on social media, on TikTok, wherever you pick up this podcast, just message us on social media. Lee, Ryan, myself, we'll pick it up and we will include that as part of the part of the things that you want us to talk about, and we can give you our perspective on that particular subject. And if we don't know about it, we'll be honest and say, we don't know about this subject, and we'll explore it. So please, it'd be great, because we're on a journey. You should be on a journey with us. So please send your ideas in of what you want to talk about, what your challenges are, because we all have them. Life comes in. I've been reading a book called by Jordan Peterson so far called 12 Rules for Life, between the antidote to chaos. And, life can go swimmingly and suddenly, bang, something comes in. How do you deal with that? How do you respond to it? As I think things that you are challenged with, what are they? Let us know and we can talk about those subjects there. I just think it might be some nice little sort of another thing we could do.
I absolutely agree. And as I was wrapping up, I want to reel you back in, Joe, reel you back in. And I'll say 3, 2, 1, Inspiration Nation. Catch you guys later.
Later. Thanks, Tick. So I want to know now, what's your biggest takeaway? Don't forget to hashtag it with Inspiration Nation in the comments below and make sure you commit to action. Thank you for checking it out. So don't forget to catch all our other Inspiration Nation podcast episodes right over here. So go check them out. And also, don't forget to subscribe because that will tell you when your next video goes live by you hitting that amazing bell. So until next time, it's Inspiration Nation and I'll see you right over there. I can see you joined as well.
Hold on, and we'll stop that. No, we'll go. We'll just go. Sorry, Ryan, I have to cut this first 30 seconds off. Let's go.